Police officers bear witness to some of the most challenging and heart-wrenching situations during their duty. Despite their extensive training and years of experience, nothing truly prepares them for encountering violence or scenes of deep sorrow. Their responsibility is weighty: to safeguard the vulnerable and uphold peace, a task that's far from a leisurely stroll. When Officer Andrew Thomas responded to an emergency call regarding an abandoned stolen car, he encountered something unexpected: a glimpse from his own past. This encounter shook him to his core, leading him to make a decision that would irrevocably alter not only his life, but another's as well. Officer Andrew Thomas, a member of the San Diego Police Department, was intimately acquainted with the countless distressing scenarios officers encounter in their line of duty. He had borne witness to humanity's darkest facets, from domestic violence to murder and neglect. These grim realities were a crucial yet deeply disheartening aspect of wearing the badge, stories that often populated the news and contributed to the desensitization of the general populace to their shocking nature. Officer Thomas understood the weight of these experiences. Nonetheless, serving as an officer in San Diego, California had its own merits. The city basked in the sun for almost 300 days a year, a climate that suited his role well. Furthermore, San Diego boasted attractions like SeaWorld, a place where Officer Thomas found himself working closely with marine animals. His profound love for animals had factored into his choice of calling San Diego home. San Diego had the added advantage of a relatively low crime rate, standing 15% below the national average. Yet Officer Thomas was acutely aware that crime could materialize anywhere at any time. This awareness guided him as he embarked on a day in November. A radio call crackled through the static, summoning Officer Thomas to investigate a stolen car. Conveniently, the location was just around the corner, prompting him to head towards the coordinates. With caution born of experience, he approached the vehicle, flashlight in hand, uncertain about what lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, his flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing an empty front and passenger seat. The car appeared vacant until a shadowy figure stirred in the back seat. He braced himself for whatever he might uncover. In the dim light, a sight greeted him that filled him with both relief and astonishment. A gentle-faced yellow Labrador lay sprawled across the back seat. The unexpected discovery tugged at his heartstrings. Instinctively, he knew he had to extricate the dog from this perplexing situation. A pang of recognition coursed through him as he looked into the eyes of the abandoned pup. Its resemblance to his late dog, Malachi, was uncanny. Only a few months had passed since Malachi's passing, and the loss was still keenly felt. The pup's demeanor echoed the disposition of Malachi, who had been his companion for over a decade. It was Malachi who had journeyed with him from Fresno to San Diego as he pursued his career in law enforcement. Moved by this poignant connection, Officer Thomas gently lifted the dog from the back seat. Fueled by protocol, he directed his cruiser to the San Diego Humane Society, the official course of action. However, a bond had formed between them during that short journey. At the Humane Society, he recounted the situation to the staff. The dog appeared in good health, leading them to suspect that it had an owner. Although Officer Thomas felt a pang of disappointment at the notion, he adhered to the protocol. As the days turned into weeks and no owner came forward, Officer Thomas found himself facing a crossroads. His vow never to adopt another dog after Malachi's passing had begun to waver. The day he responded to that call had kindled a change in him, a shift that signaled a new chapter in his life. Officer Thomas swiftly completed the necessary paperwork at the Humane Society and welcomed the sweet-natured dog into his home. He named the dog Victor as a symbol of his triumph over the challenging circumstances he had endured. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing day. As affirmed by the San Diego Police Department, Officer Thomas and Victor became inseparable from the moment of adoption. The story of their unique bond was shared on the SDPD's Instagram profile, eliciting a flood of responses and even catching the attention of cable news networks. Commenters poured in their sentiments, with one stating, "This warms my heart so much. It was meant to be," while another remarked, "Thank God for people like Ander." Officer Thomas' story stood as a rare ray of hope amid the often disheartening experiences faced by those on the front lines. Even in the most unpredictable moments, miracles can unfold. The profound connection between man and dog carries undeniable healing power. Victor and Officer Thomas might recognize elements of their own journey in the stories of other officers and their special canine companions. On February 15, 2015, a seemingly ordinary day for on-duty police officer Jeff Gonzalez in Autumn Ridge, Wisconsin, took an unforeseen turn. Despite the peaceful ambience, the neighborhood was about to witness a dramatic shift. The air was frigid and the ground was blanketed with snow from the previous week. Against this wintry backdrop, Officer Gonzalez spotted a distressed black Labrador retriever roaming alone, a sight that deviated from the norm. Although he wasn't specifically tasked with assisting lost pets, Officer Gonzalez felt compelled to help, driven by his affinity for animals and his commitment to community service. However, it became apparent that the dog wasn't the sole one facing trouble. The dog exhibited signs of agitation, pacing anxiously back and forth. Concerned about the possibility of the dog wandering into traffic, Officer Gonzalez reduced his speed and cautiously approached, aiming to keep the dog calm. As Officer Gonzalez's car drew near, the dog's attention shifted towards him, and it began to bark energetically. Rolling down his windows, the officer's presence seemed to elicit excitement from the dog, evident through its wagging tail. Despite this display of friendliness, an underlying issue remained. Stepping out of his vehicle, Officer Gonzalez was met with the Labrador's frantic excitement, running about in a state of frenzy. The officer wondered if his presence had inadvertently frightened the dog, but could there be more to the situation? The Labrador's behavior suggested a desire to lead Officer Gonzalez somewhere. Intrigued, the officer followed the dog's lead, which guided him to a nearby house. Soon enough, the reason behind the dog's distress became clear. Inside the house, Officer Gonzalez discovered a woman, presumably the dog's owner, seated on her front porch chair in an unconscious state. Assessing her condition, he found her unresponsive to his touch, initially fearing the worst. While her lips were tinged with blue and her body was cold to the touch, he discerned a faint pulse. She was alive. Swiftly, he called dispatch for assistance. Seeking aid for the woman, Officer Gonzalez also contacted his partner, and together they transported her into her home to shield her from the frigid temperatures that could further endanger her life. With the information they gathered, the officers identified the woman as Crystal Went. Their next step involved reaching out to her next of kin, an emotionally challenging task that fell upon Officer Gonzalez to convey to Crystal's daughter, Tian Went. Tian, startled by the news, promptly rushed to the hospital with her aunt, anxious to learn the details of her mother's condition. Meanwhile, Crystal's loyal dog, John Boy, remained agitated, reflecting the depth of his concern. The medical explanation for the incident pointed to Crystal's heart condition. She had been unconscious in the cold for nearly an hour, a perilous circumstance that could have had fatal consequences. Yet, her survival was attributed to the swift action of Officer Gonzalez and the resourcefulness of her black Labrador retriever, John Boy. Officer Gonzalez was unreserved in crediting John Boy as the true hero of the situation. "I gotta believe that at this point, he pointed me in the right direction," he acknowledged during an interview. Tian echoed the sentiment, emphasizing the protective bond shared between John Boy and her mother. This bond came as no surprise, considering John Boy's history. Having spent time in a local shelter before being adopted by Crystal, in Tian's eyes, John Boy and her mother were destined for one another. As Crystal's recovery progressed, she found solace in knowing that a special companion awaited her at home. Expressing her gratitude, Tian enveloped Officer Gonzalez in a heartfelt embrace. With Crystal's health on an upward trajectory, the diligent officer's decision to investigate a situation that others might have dismissed had proved crucial. This tale underscores the immense value that countless individuals attach to their pets, who are genuinely treasured members of their families.